Top of the day, beautiful people. Top of the day. The twabble. Right. Just a little bit. All right, that's a little bit better. This is going to pluck my nerves today. Let's see. All right. All right. All right, beautiful people. Top of the day. Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday. Guess what, y'all? The power is back on today. Yes, came back on yesterday about 12:30 in the afternoon. So it took a couple hours to cool the whole house down. It was like almost 100 degrees up in this piece. All right. No, seriously, it really was. That's what the thermometer said. Although we had the fans going, but it's just hot. It was steady rising. Okay. Ezekiel. All right, y'all. Today it is Thursday, August the 6th, 2020, day 218. We are reading the last two chapters of Ezekiel chapter 47, 48, but we are starting right in Daniel, one of my other most favorite books. I guess you can't name multiple books the most favorite book. That's why I said one of my most favorite books. Okay. All right. So, let's go ahead and get started. Betwabble, Trina. Hey, girl. Hey. Okay. Nope, that is not. What is up with this today? Let's go here. Okay. Yep. All right. Ezekiel 47. All right, y'all, here we go. Ezekiel chapter 47. In my vision, the man brought me back to the entrance of the temple. There I saw a stream flowing east from beneath the door of the temple and passing to the right of the altar on its south side. The man brought me outside of the wall through the north gateway and led me around the eastern entrance. There I could see the water flowing out through the south side of the east gateway. Measuring as he went, he took me along the stream for 1,750 feet and then led me across. The water was up to my ankles. He measured off another 1,750 feet and led me across again. This time the water was up to my knees. After another 1,750 feet, it was up to my waist. Then he measured another 1,750 feet, and the river was too deep to walk across. It was deep enough to swim in, but too deep to walk through. He asked me, "Have you been watching, son of man?" Then he led me back along the riverbank. When I returned, I was surprised by the sight of many trees growing on both sides of the rivers. Then he said to me, "This river flows east through the desert into the valley of the Dead Sea. The waters of this stream will make the salty waters of the Dead Sea fresh and pure. There will be swarms of living things wherever the water of this river flows. Fish will abound in the Dead Sea, for its waters will become fresh. Life will flourish wherever this water flows. Fishermen will stand along the shores of the Dead Sea, all the way from En-Gedi to Eglaim. The shores will be covered with nets drying in the sun. Fish of every kind will fill the Dead Sea, just as they did the Mediterranean. But the marshes and the swamps will not be purified. They will still be salty. Fruit trees of all kinds will grow along both sides of the river. The leaves of these trees will never turn brown and fall, and there will always be fruit on their branches. There will be a new crop every month, for they are watered by the river flowing from the temple. The fruit will be for food, and the leaves for healing." This is what Yahuwah says: "Divide the land in this way for the 12 tribes of Israel. The descendants of Joseph will be given 2 shares of land. Otherwise," it went out. Okay, y'all can see me? Okay. Let me make sure my thing is on, y'all. Hold on. Is still recording? It's not overheating. I don't know what's going on with it today. Okay. I don't know. The thing keep popping up, y'all. If you can't see me or something, just say, "Hey, we can't see you. Where did you go?" Okay. Otherwise, excuse me, otherwise each tribe will be given an equal share. I took a solemn oath and swore that I would give this land to your ancestors, and it will now come to you as your possession. These are the boundaries of the land. The northern border will run from the Mediterranean toward Hethlon, then on through Labo Hamath to Zedad. And if you don't realize it, right here, this is given like a land map, but it's describing it. I wish I knew where all these places really were. Then I would probably draw out, or somebody probably did already draw it out, but they didn't change names and stuff, and move boundaries around so much that it's really, really hard to know, unless Yahuwah has really revealed it to you, and you've been living over there a while. You've been actually going through trying to lay it out yourself. All right. So these are we're in verse 15, Ezekiel chapter 47. These are the boundaries of the land. The northern border will run from the Mediterranean toward Hethlon, then on through Labo Hamath to Zedad. Then it will run to Berothah and Sibram, which are on the border between Damascus and Hamath, and finally to Hazar Hatticon on the border of Haran. So the northern border will run from the Mediterranean to Hazar Enan on the border between Hamath to the north on the border between Hamath to the north and Damascus to the south. The eastern border starts at a point between Haran and Damascus and runs south along the Jordan River between Israel and Gilead, past the Dead Sea as far south as Tamar. This will be the eastern border. The southern border will go west from Tamar to the waters of Meribah at Kadesh, and then follow the course of the brook of Egypt to the Mediterranean. This will be the southern border. On the west side, the Mediterranean itself will be your border from the southern border to the point where the northern border begins, opposite Labo Hamath. Divide the land within these boundaries among the tribes of Israel. Distribute the land as an allotment for yourselves and for the foreigners who have joined you and are raising their families among you. They will be like native-born Israelites to you, and you will receive an allotment among the tribes. These foreigners are to be given land within the territory of the tribe with whom they now live. I, Yahuwah, have spoken. Good morning, Auntie. Good morning. All right, y'all, last chapter of Ezekiel chapter 48. Then we're going to read the first chapter of Daniel, and then we'll be done. Ezekiel chapter 48. Here is the list of tribes of Israel and the territory each is to receive. The territory of Dan is in the extreme north. Its boundary line follows the Hethlon road to Labo Hamath and then runs on to Hazar Enan on the border of Damascus, with Hamath to the north. Dan's territory extends all the way across the land of Israel from east to west. Asher's territory lies south of Dan's and also extends from east to west. Naphtali's land lies south of Asher's, also extending from east to west. Then comes Manasseh, south of Naphtali, and its territory also extends from east to west. South of Manasseh is Ephraim, and then Reuben, and then Judah, and all whose boundaries extend from east to west. South of Judah is the land set aside. South of Judah is the land set aside for a special purpose. It will be 8 1/3 miles wide and will extend as far east and west as the tribal territories, with a temple in the center. The area set aside for Yahuwah's temple will be 8 1/3 miles long and 6 2/3 miles wide. For the priests there will be a strip of land measuring 8 1/3 miles long by 3 1/3 miles wide, with Yahuwah's temple at the center. This area is set aside for the ordained priests, the descendants of Zadok, who served me faithfully and did not go astray with the people of Israel, and the rest of the Levites. It will be their special possession when the land is distributed, the most sacred land of all. Next to the priest's territory will lie the land where the other Levites will live. The land allotted to the Levites will be the same size and shape as belonging to the priests, 8 1/3 miles long and 3 1/3 miles wide. Together, these portions of land will measure 8 1/3 miles long by 6 2/3 miles wide. None of this special land may ever be sold or traded or used by others, for it belongs to Yahuwah. It is set apart as holy. An additional strip of land, 8 1/3 miles long by 1 2/3 miles wide, south of the sacred temple area, will be allotted for public use. Homes, pasture lands, and common lands, with a city at the center. The city would measure 1.5 miles on each side, north, south, east, and west. Open lands will surround the city for 150 yards in every direction. Outside of the city, there will be a farming area that stretches 3 1/3 miles to the east and 3 1/3 miles to the west along the border of the sacred area. This farmland will produce food for the people working in the city. Those who come from the various tribes to work in the city may farm it. This entire area, including the sacred lands and the city, is a square that measures 8 1/3 miles on each side. The areas that remain to the east and to the west of the sacred lands and the city will belong to the prince. Each of these areas will be 8 1/3 miles wide, extending in opposite directions to the eastern and western borders of Israel, with the sacred lands and the sanctuary of the temple in the center. So the prince's land will include everything between the territories allotted to Judah and Benjamin, except for the area set aside for the sacred lands and the city. These are the territories allotted to the rest of the tribes. Benjamin's territory lies just south of the prince's land, and it extends across the entire land of Israel from east to west. South of Benjamin's territory lies that of Simeon, also extending across the land from east to west. Next is the territory of Issachar, with the same eastern and western borders. Then comes the territory of Zebulun, which also extends across the land from east to west. The territory of Gad is just south of Zebulun, with the same borders to the east and west. The southern border of Gad runs from Tamar to the waters of Meribah at Kadesh, and then follows the brook of Egypt to the Mediterranean. These are the allotments that will be set aside for each tribe's exclusive possession. I, Yahuwah, have spoken. Let me look at something real quick. 29, okay. Okay. These will be the exits to the city. On the north wall, which is 1.5 miles long, there will be 3 gates, each one named after a tribe of Israel. The first will be named for Reuben, the second for Judah, the third for Levi. On the east wall, also 1.5 miles long, the gates will be named for Joseph, Benjamin, and Dan. On the south wall, also 1.5 miles long, will have gates named for Simeon, Issachar, and Zebulun. And on the west wall, also 1.5 miles long, the gates will be named for Gad, Asher, and Naphtali. The distance around the entire city will be 6 miles, and from that day, the name of the city will be called Yahuwah is there. Now, if y'all had not noticed, and if you are not familiar with the book of Revelation, you would know that when they're talking about the gates of the city and how the pearls and stuff, that actually comes from Ezekiel, if you did not know that. But anyway, go check that out, read that, put it together. All right, so that completes the reading of the book of Ezekiel. Now we start in Daniel, and we will read chapter 1. All right, y'all. Last chapter for today, Daniel chapter 1. During the 3rd year of King Jehoiakim's reign in Judah, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon came to Jerusalem and besieged it. Yahuwah gave him victory over King Jehoiakim of Judah and permitted him to take some of the sacred objects from the temple of Yahuwah. So Nebuchadnezzar took them back to the land of Babylonia and placed them in the treasure house of his God. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, his chief staff, to bring to the palace some of the young men of Judah's royal family and other noble families who had been brought to Babylon as captives. Select only strong, healthy, and good-looking young men, he said. Make sure they are well-versed in every branch of learning, are gifted with knowledge and good judgment, and are suited to serve in the royal palace. Train these young men in the language and literature of Babylon. The king assigned them a daily ration of food and wine from his own kitchens. They were to be trained for 3 years, and then they would enter the royal service. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were 4 of the young men chosen, all from the tribe of Judah. The chief of staff renamed them with these Babylonian names. Daniel was called Belteshazzar. Hananiah was called Shadrach. Mishael was called Meshach, and Azariah was called Abednego. But Daniel was determined not to defile himself by eating the food and wine given to them by the king. He asked the chief of staff for permission not to eat these unacceptable foods. Now Yahuwah had given the chief of staff both respect and affection for Daniel, but he responded, I am afraid of my lord the king, who has ordered that you eat this food and wine. If you become pale and thin compared to the other youths of your age, I am afraid the king will have me beheaded. Now let me just bring out something here. For all those who have been transitioning or have transitioned to a plant-based lifestyle, you know that there is a lot of fear-mongering around those things that we eat. And when you're talking about going plant-based, or it's the same with anything that will bring you life and cause you to grow. You see it around homeschooling too. Oh, they're not going to be social. What? That people, you can tell people have been indoctrinated to say that, because anytime people say that, they almost repeat that verbatim. You know, like your child is going to be separated from the rest of the world. But if you've actually homeschooled your children, you know that your children become more outspoken. They become more confident. They actually learn something because they're being taught by their parents. Not that it's always the case, but majority of the time, people who homeschool their children, and now we know everybody they were forced to homeschool unless their schools open back up and they put their children in. But parents who had, not saying that everybody doesn't want to, maybe they don't have the opportunity to because they have to work and they can't afford to homeschool. So that's not a strike against them, but y'all get what I'm saying. For parents who actually pull their children out, they are proactive because they actually want their children to learn. They don't want them to be dumbed down by the system where they kind of just fall in line like a robot. You're just a cog in a system. Homeschoolers, okay, y'all get what I'm saying. But a lot of homeschoolers are known to receive scholarships from colleges, because the colleges, even the military, they would choose a homeschooler first over, if you go do the research, because homeschoolers graduate. They always graduate in the 85 percentile up to the 100 percentile in their academics, because they get more one-on-one the education, and they're more outspoken. They're more developed mentally. You know, they can think, they have critical thinking skills that they actually put to use because they have real-time, real-life experience, and they're not just sitting behind a desk, listen to somebody talk to them, but their parents actually, their learning encompasses like everyday life, like they experience their education, right? So the same thing. So when you hear people say, oh, homeschoolers, where they going to get their social skills? Oh, that is programmed, you know, to kind of, it's a fear-mongering system to kind of, you know, keep you in that space of fear where you don't step out and realize that there is no boogeyman out here. Y'all, come on out here into the light. Ain't no boogeyman out here. They just trying to scare y'all. Some people, they be like, what? Wait, no, because they said, wait, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to watch your kids for a while. Well, they seem to be, oh, wow, they're doing awesome. They got a scholarship? What? They were accepted where? Oh, and by this time, you done wasted so much time. Not saying that you shouldn't watch, but, you know, do it afraid. You know, I think, who said that? I think Joyce Meyer said that. I'm not a big fan of Joyce Meyer, but that's something I like. She said, do it afraid, because you have to push yourself to get over your fear. And once you do it, you will realize that there was no reason to be afraid. People are afraid of the unknown, what they don't know. So it's like, at the society we live in, they use that to kind of keep people in a box and keep them from growing. Even around the church world, it is based on fear mongering, because you feel like if you step out of line, you're gonna lose your salvation and you're gonna go to hell. But like, wait a minute, Father, oh, like seriously, I've been there. Like sometimes you can get so caught up in the religious factions that you're paralyzed, and you realize after a while, like you aren't doing anything with your life. You're just getting up, going to work, go to church, go home, getting up, going to work, go to church, go home. It's become, and you realize 5 and 10 years down the line, what have I done with my life? What have I done to set up for my children? And all these things you start thinking about, and it's like, wait a minute, this cannot be the abundant life you were talking about. So you gotta, all right, Father, this. And then once you remove the fear, you begin to step out, and you got other, let's not call them crabs in a bucket, but other people who are genuinely afraid for you, that you're going to get yourself killed if you step from behind this protection wall of fear, that they genuinely want to help save your soul and bring you back in. But I said all that to say, you see the same thing right here with the king's assistant when he's talking to Daniel. He said, listen, Daniel, if you don't eat what the king prescribed and drink this wine, you're going to become pale. Like, you're going to have me endanger my head to the king. I'm going to lose my head because you're going to start looking more pale and stuff. And Daniel said, listen, and I ain't read that part yet. He said, just try me for 10 days. Let's just eat a plant-based diet. And he said, you watch. You look and you observe me and compare me to the rest of those who you are giving this magnificent feast to. They're eating this meat, the king's meat, and all the delicacies from his table. Give them that, give me this, test me for a period of 10 days and see, who looks better or who performs better. So he decided, Yahuwah gave him a heart for Daniel. He cared for Daniel. So he listened to Daniel and he decided to test Daniel. Listen to what happens though when the fear is removed. He had to test it. You have to test things in life. You will say, try me. Come on. Let's have a conversation together. So some things you have to be taught directly from Yah himself, because people, although they have good intentions on leading you in the right path, sometimes they lead you astray ignorantly. And you end up somewhere you never intended to be. And then sometimes that's what's needed sometimes. Not saying that you should go off on a path, but it wakes you up because it causes you to, it snaps you out of your sleep. It breaks you from the slumber you've been in. And you start observing, wait a minute, what is going on here? Something don't seem right. Okay, so listen to this. Daniel was called Belteshazzar, Hananiah was called Shadrach, Mishael was called Meshach, and Azariah was called Abednego. But Daniel was determined not to defile himself by eating the food and wine given to them by the king. He asked the chief of staff for permission not to eat these unacceptable foods. Now Yahuwah had given the chief of staff both respect and affection for Daniel, but he responded, here's that fear. I am afraid of my lord the king, who has ordered that you eat this food and wine. If you become pale and thin compared to the other youths your age, I'm afraid the king will have me beheaded. So he think he's looking out for himself and for Daniel. Like, look, you become thin and I'm going to die because you one of the top choices, and the king going to think I ain't doing my job. So you need to fall in line with everybody else. Daniel spoke to the attendant who had been appointed by the chief of staff to look after Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Please test us for 10 days on a diet of vegetables and water, Daniel said. And at the end of 10 days, see how we look compared to the other young men who are eating the king's food. Then make your decision in light of what you see. The attendant agreed to Daniel's suggestion and tested them for 10 days. At the end of 10 days, Daniel and his 3 friends looked healthier and better nourished than the young men who had been eating the food assigned by the king. So after that, the attendant fed them only vegetables instead of the food and wine provided for the others. Yahuwah gave these 4 young men an unusual aptitude for learning every aspect of literature and wisdom, and Yahuwah gave Daniel the special ability to interpret the meanings of visions and dreams. And you'll also realize that even when you go to a plant-based diet, which is what they did, which was probably how they were already living at first, you'll realize that you're thinking, not only does your body begin to correct itself and heal itself where it needs to be healed, because our bodies are, they are amazing, and they were designed to heal themselves. When you give it the life-giving foods that it was designed to ingest and to assimilate through the body, to cause it to operate at optimum levels, to be your best self, you'll notice even how you think and your clarity of mind, and you just really the fog is gone, where you can really do a self-evaluation, and you literally begin to wake up, like I said, like, what is going on? What have I been doing with my life all this time? And you begin, your spiritual hearing becomes clearer. You can see clearer physically, spiritually. Everything just begins to clear up, y'all. And those of you who have made the transition or are transitioning, you can tell the difference, and you know that these things are true. So we can't all the time take the word of people who are trying to help save us, because they could be mistaken. And although they have good intentions, they still could be wrong. So that's where we need to do our own due diligence and take control of our own lives, and not constantly be led by other people and their doctrines and their thoughts and it's like, if you do, you can be led all your life. You are created to be a sovereign being who depends, and that's almost like an oxymoron, a sovereign being who depends on Yah. But if you have a relationship with your creator, that makes sense, because you'll realize you won't be controlled by other men. That relationship between you and Yah, it keeps you focused, and it keeps you online, and it keeps you from being dragged into traps and just a bunch of crap that messes your life up for years. Okay. Yahuwah gave these 4 young men an unusual aptitude for understanding every aspect of literature and wisdom, and Yahuwah gave Daniel the special ability to interpret the meaning of visions and dreams. When the training period ordered by the king was completed, the chief of staff brought all the young men to King Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and no one impressed him as much as Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the royal service. Whenever the king consulted them in any matter requiring wisdom and balanced judgment, he found them 10 times more capable than any of the magicians and enchanters in his entire kingdom. Daniel remained in the royal service until the first year of the reign of King Cyrus. And that, my beautiful people, is our reading for today. We read the last 2 chapters of Ezekiel, which was Ezekiel 47 and 48, and we just finished reading the first chapter of Daniel. So if you missed it, go back and read it, listen to it, put it on the Bible app. All right, y'all, this is day 218, Thursday, August the 6th, 2020. So we can go ahead and read the blessing, which is found where? That's right, in Numbers chapter 6, verses 22 through 27. And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto Aaron and unto his sons, saying, On this wise ye shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them, May Yahuwah bless us and keep us. May Yahuwah make his face to shine upon us and be gracious unto us. May Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon us and give us his peace. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. Good morning, Miss Sheila. All right, beautiful people, I love you, and I will see you bright and early in the morning. Peace.